Comrades, friends, lovers, enemies, whoever's watching, whatever you want me to call you, welcome. Welcome back. You know, this is our second episode. I hope people really dug the first episode. But this is going to continue. The news left with your host, Miguel. Allegedly. Really, it depends on who's asking. Just depends on who's asking. You know, the feds are knocking on my door. I'm not Miguel. I'm somebody else. Okay. So, comrades, before we dive into our two main stories for today, I want to, well, first of all, you know, we're going to be talking about Thurston County corruption, and we're going to be talking about Patriot Front. For some fucking reason, we've got to. But I wanted to start off in discussing Thurston County. I want to go ahead and give you a bit of a precursor. You see, there's a lot of corruption that goes on at the highest levels, but what was most shocking was the fact that Tiny Toese got arrested at all. People will remember this from last week, or it was like 2 days ago. All right. 2 days ago episode, our last episode, our first episode, that is. We reported on the fact that Tiny Toese, Tiny Toese, the leader of the Pacific Northwest Proud Boys and right-hand man to Joey Gibson, he got himself arrested again. Haha. We've been tracking it for a little bit, but you know what I found this morning, and why I need to update you at all on his situation, is I woke up this morning and I noticed a bunch of different news outlets reporting on the fact that Tiny Toese is now in jail. Today. And this man has been in jail since January 5th, and apparently December 26th was when a warrant was issued for him in the first place. However, January 5th was when he was arrested, and that means he's been in jail for a long time, and nobody's bothered to check up on him. His friends are just like, I guess he's gone now. You know, God, you got great friends, Tiny. You fucking goon. Yeah, so that member of one of the local goons is in jail right now, Thurston County. It turns out, the reason we're bringing this up is it turns out that the information that they gave out specified that the charges from the state of Oregon that Tiny has, the ones that are keeping him in jail for a while, those relate to August 22nd in Portland, Oregon. Oh, man. August 22nd, we're going to talk about this in a future episode sometime. I really like to cover like hyper-local events like this, and this was kind of like the biggest day of inciting a riot that this guy did. We have a couple clips of the Goon Squad being cringy as hell. Can we show it now? We can? Well, then why don't we do it? Why do I have to ask? Isn't that what the clip guy's for? This is self-recorded, so just play the clip.
Yeah, these folks are already trying to attack me! I did nothing to them! I've never put my hands on Antifa! I've never said anything threatening to them!
Look at
this shit! Fuck these people! Fuck Antifa! Fuck all of you! I'm tired of getting attacked!
Hey guys! Can we move that smoke a little bit out?
Just throw that. What the fuck is that?
Move that smoke bomb a little bit out there. We got elderly people here, guys,
Well, I hope you enjoyed that clip. That is the Summer of Love Festival, which is what's really disturbing about this whole thing is that day, August 22nd, obviously was a day intended for political violence, right? But the Proud Boys decided to call it the Summer of Love. Yay, in Portland. Here's the thing. They did a Fall Love Fest in Los Angeles, but it turns out that their next Summer of Love event, specifically, is going to be Olympia, Washington. So we're going to keep people up to date with that, but that's what we've seen as of this last summer. So anyway, that's a little bit of an update on our local goon, Tiny Toese, who is going to be in there a long time. He's looking at 10 years, like Alan Swinney. I'm thinking of making t-shirts to that end. One of him laying out on the sidewalk from getting shot. We have that clip. It's a good memory. With the words, FAFO, fuck around and find out on it. Or, another one of just him in jail, something like goon. That's it. Okay, yeah. Fuck you, Tiny. I hope your leg still hurts. Well, comrades, our first story today, as I was giving you a little bit of a hint to, we're going to be talking about Thurston County Jail. And not just Thurston County Jail, but the court system in general. The reason it comes up in discussion is obviously because I live here, duh, but also for the fact that Tiny Toese was arrested. And there is a little bit of context that needs to be analyzed to this. So he is facing charges in Thurston County for his actions on January 6, 2021. A day of terror, as people know, but his most notable accomplishment was getting into a fight with a cop. Not at the U.S. Capitol. It's kind of like the Kellogg's is the better brand, I guess. You know, the Great Value brand. You know what I'm saying. He is the Great Value brand of Enrique Tarrio. Okay? And the funny thing is that he was participating in the right wing's homage to January 6th is what it was. They wanted to storm the Capitol, but they were like, well, there's nobody in there, so let's just storm the governor's mansion. Anyway, so Tiny also made the news back in September 4th of 2021, where he attacked a group of people and I downtown with 70 of them chased us downtown. They attacked us with batons, bear spray. They had knives, and they had a homemade bomb that they threw at the crowd, right? So he made the news back then, but what he made the news for was getting himself shot in the leg like an idiot. And that was pretty funny. We still have that clip. We're going to play it again. I think this is just... Alright, no we're not. We've already played it. We're not going to overload you with it. But comrades, the reason that the context is necessary is because the person that shot Tiny in self-defense, in an act of self-defense, was the one arrested a few weeks later. But now, finally, Tiny is facing some actual repercussions. And, most of them relate to August 22nd, but... there's September 4th, there are other days they've done terrible things, and hey, maybe somebody should go to jail about it, and I'm not a big proponent of jails, but holy shit, you can't just let these dudes do whatever they want for so very, very long. But, this is why discussing Thurston County is so goddamn important, because Thurston County enables fascist violence. That's it, that's our whole message. No, I'm not going to leave yet. You see, that's the whole thing, is that Thurston County enables fascist violence. We saw this from back in December of 2020. For those that don't remember, there was a massive anti-democratic Stop the Steal movement happening across the states. And anti-fascists in their community decided to come out to the streets and challenge the fascist mobs trying to overturn democracy. And here's the thing in Olympia that resulted in 2 people getting shot 2 weeks in a row. Back-to-back shooters each week. From the Trump side, obviously, those are the dudes running around with the guns. However, what is notable is that the first shooter, named Christopher Gunsler out of Port Orchard, Washington, this man fired his handgun into a crowd of protesters. He was booked in jail for about until March, I believe, March or April of 2021, where he was suddenly released and all of his charges were dropped. Amazing. The next week that there was a shooting, the shooter was named Forrest McCullough from Bellingham, Washington. And now this man is very interesting because apparently he used to do tours right before he came out with the mob on December 12th, 2020. He would do these little tours of schools where he would wear a MAGA hat and just be like, yeah, you gotta respect other people's differences, don't you see? That's how much he cared that he shot somebody in the abdomen. And he did. And he went to jail for a week. And then he got bonded out and all of his charges were dropped. Weird, huh? And that's just the tip of the iceberg in regards to Thurston County. There's a lot more I can talk about. There's the case of Logan Schindelman. There's the case of blatant racism and John Snazza. But the most important thing that we'll start off with on this episode is that they enable fascist violence and they allow fascist shooters. As long as you are right-wing, you will not face consequences. But the person that shot Tiny faced consequences. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And hey, maybe Tiny is a loser. I had to cut the last part. I got a little too heated in my emotions. But this is the way that it is. Now, there's other things to talk about with Thurston County courts. How corrupt they are, how much they go after the unhoused, etc. But it's also very important to note who is the Thurston County Sheriff. Our Thurston County Sheriff is this guy, John Snaza. Here's a little clip of him explaining how, due to the recent changes in the legislature, he couldn't do his job.
Hello, I'm John Snaza, your Thurston County Sheriff. Today I wanted to talk about some recent legislative changes that will go into effect on July 25th, 2021, and will impact all residents in Washington State. Several new laws were recently passed by our state legislature, and many will have direct impacts on law enforcement. This video will specifically cover House Bill 1310, called the Use of Force Bill. Prior to this new law enforcement was able to use force based on reasonable suspicion, imminent threat, or officer safety. This new law changes the threshold for use of force to probable cause to make an arrest, effect an arrest, prevent escape, or to protect against an imminent threat. Probable cause is a much higher threshold and only applies when a person can be arrested and not simply detained. Imminent threat means that based on the totality of circumstances, it is objectively reasonable to believe that a person has the present and apparent ability, opportunity, and intent to immediately cause death or serious bodily injury to the peace officer or another person. What does this mean for our citizens? All law enforcement agencies across the state are working with the legal advisors and others to determine the exact impacts that these laws will create, but we do know that they will change the response to many calls for service that we currently respond to.
But what I think is notable in all of this is that some of these things that they want to be able to participate in again are probably not great. Here's what I'll say. So one of the things that John Snaza was complaining about is the fact that the Washington State Legislature, as of 2021, created a law forbidding high-speed chases because it's too high risk, too many people die, too many innocent people die. That's kind of the problem. It's not that they're just letting crime happen. I don't think we're going to do a whole take on this whole local crime epidemic that people are talking about. It's not really an honest representation of what's going on. But in regards to the high-speed chases, it's collateral damage. That's part of the reason that they're like, hey, we probably shouldn't do that. Thurston County, though, had a big thing to say about it, and they wrote a letter along with other sheriffs in the state to complain about such a rule change. And what they said was that, we need to be able to, get violent criminals. But, what's hilarious to me is that they can't even fucking do that. There is an incident back in January 2021 from Thurston County itself. Thurston County. They shot a dog. That's the news. It's kind of sad, too. I don't really care about the police dog, to be honest with you. He's a snitch. Traitor. Class traitor. No, Arlo was his name. This dog. He was a Washington State Patrol and Thurston County Sheriff Canine Unit. And a Thurston County officer and a Washington State Patrol officer decided to get into a high-speed chase because they had nothing better to do on that long night in January. And as they're speeding down, they decide, you know what, I'm going to shoot. And they shoot their own dog. They shot their own dog. But here's the thing. This is where it got complicated. They didn't say that, obviously. Why would they admit to it? Instead, Arlo was shot in the line of duty. And the dog had lots of injuries that it had to recover from. So they decided to raise him some money on GoFundMe. Made like $200,000. And then guess what? They didn't actually give him any. Instead, well, they probably gave him a little bit, but a dog doesn't need $200,000 for medical bills, especially if it is a commissioned officer. Like, its insurance will cover that, you fucks. Because they took all that money and they created a website to resell stuff from Thurston County to local police offices. Or, tactical gear, etc. etc. Stuff that they own. That seems corrupt, right? Just reselling a bunch of garbage, but apparently not, because it is a privately owned thing. It's the officer who shot the dog raised money to be able to heal the dog, saying that the dog was shot by somebody else. Well, it turns out the Olympian asked him about a month later to retell his story, and they noticed some discrepancies, so... yeah, that is just the beginning of the tip of the iceberg. I don't know why it took me a while to come up with that metaphor, but it is the very beginning of what we'll discuss pretty frequently. I like to talk about local police corruption. And our Thurston County Sheriffs are not just a bunch of goons, they're also murderers. There's a lot of cases, just like police departments around the states, there are cases of people being murdered. The one that I can remember the most is a Joel Nelson who was murdered by Thurston County Sheriffs. Well, there was another federal execution that, there's really no justice for from Thurston County. Look, Michael Reinl, people remember the name. This is a thing that I'm going to do a whole video about him and his case, because he was murdered in cold blood. And that's the thing, is that Thurston County Sheriffs themselves investigated this right after the Pacific Northwest Violent Offender Task Force murdered him, right? For those that don't know the context, Michael Reinl was a protester in Portland, Oregon during the protests, the George Floyd protests, the uprising of 2020. He was walking around doing security. That was his thing. He did security for the protests, liked to make sure people got out safe. He was escorting somebody home, when all of a sudden... Aaron J. Danielson and Chandler Pappas, two members of Patriot Prayers and affiliated with the Proud Boys, started attacking people, just like all over the protest, bear spray and a bat. And Danielson kind of just fucked around with the wrong person and got himself shot? What? The wrong person was shot that night. It should have been Chandler Pappas? Okay. We didn't say that. We're being told things, okay? No, that's the thing. Michael Reinl shot Danielson in self-defense, in an act of self-defense, and then he got tracked down to Lacey, Washington 3 days later in Thurston County. That's kind of why it matters. And he was approached by the Pacific Northwest Violent Offender Task Force, and they just shot him down in a barrage of bullets, as witnesses will testify, as the New York Times investigation unfolded, discovered, whatever. So there's that as well. They can't do their job. And when somebody asks them, like, hey, did we do a bad job? They're always like, you did a good job. Thanks for fucking murdering him in cold blood. Because as we note, Donald Trump bragged about that incident at a rally in North Carolina about a week later. And he said, oh, they didn't want to take him alive. They just went in and they did what they needed to do. And that was it. So you see... that's a federal execution. Thurston County, however, the Thurston County Sheriffs investigated the whole matter, and in March of 2021, they announced no fucking charges. That's just the tip of the iceberg. And again, I want to do a whole episode about Michael Reinl, and I want to continue discussing the corruption of Thurston County Sheriffs, but that's a pretty notable thing that, maybe... we shouldn't forget about Michael Reinl. Maybe somebody could, go to jail, please, and be held accountable for a federal execution. I get very heated about this case because the man was an anti-fascist. He called himself 100% Antifa. And that is a hero in my book. Rest in power. Comrades, you're still here. No, the news hasn't left, but it's leaving soon, and I want to give you a little bit of another story before we go today. Thanks for sticking around, comrades. I really appreciate those of you that are already starting to support us, The news left. Yeah, okay, so our final story tonight concerns, Patriot Front. I hate to bring them up. They are a cringy group, you know. Bunch of just young white kids who are angry and have nothing better to do than to argue for a white ethno-state. Little bit of a rundown on this organization. Patriot Front is a hate group. They are extremists. They got their start in the Unite the Right rally of 2017 when their leader Thomas Rousseau was part of Vanguard America. But after Heather Heyer was murdered by a fascist in a car, they decided, you know what, maybe we should distance ourselves and rebrand ourselves, if you will. How can we cover up our fascism? Well, Patriot Front is their project, and they're not hiding it well. Their symbol is the fasces. The bundle of sticks, you know, that Mussolini used because he was the first fascist in Italy, and it's an old Roman symbol. Come on, like people, okay. The fasces, their symbol's actually the fasces, like with an axe, and in red, white, and blue. So just real American fascism. You didn't even have to reinvent the wheel, y'all. You could have just used the 13 colony flag, like the 3%ers do, and just say it like that, because that's kind of the same thing. Because what they're arguing for, they believe they're fascists, they're Nazis, they're American Nazis, and they genuinely believe that the American people, the white people specifically, are blessed and should be able to have a white ethno-state and kill all the minorities. So, and the communists, you know, they really don't like that. Yeah, so their messaging, you know, is supposed to represent as like American or something, but it gets to be pretty concerning. The reason that we're bringing them up is they've been making the news a little bit recently. As we saw, they showed up in Chicago. They showed up for a March for Life march. That seems like a lot of words. A pro-life march, the March for Life in Chicago. They showed up with a bunch of conservatives. And they actually, you know, what's funny is some conservatives actually had something to say, as we'll show you by this clip.
Watch that happen. I'm a conservative. You guys are embarrassing conservatives.
Reclaim America!
Reclaim America! No.
Reclaim America!
Reclaim America! You are not. No, you're not part of this march.
Hey, buddy.
You are not part of this.
Relax, please.
Yeah, put down your bullhorn.
Relax, please.
Obviously, it doesn't absolve conservatism. You know, my whole thing is like, hey, if the Nazis are showing up at my rally and think that they feel like they should just be here and they belong with us, like, maybe that says something about me, right? So they showed up in Chicago, which was actually shocking to me because, you know, they also held a march in D.C. where their vans got lost and some of them were stranded on the National Mall. That was pretty funny. And they showed up in Philly a few months before that. In D.C. and Chicago, they held a successful march, sadly, and were able to just march through the streets. They did not get challenged by anti-fascists. However, in Philly, whole different story. Watch the clip.
Yeah, you real fucking cool. Yeah, you real fucking tough. You real tough. You real tough. You fucking stupid idiot.
Okay, and what's notable about this is that wasn't like Antifa or anti-fascists per se. That was just some dudes out in Philly. You don't fuck with Philly. It's some dudes probably watching a hardcore show and they're just like, all right, let's just fight the KKK on the streets. Good job. Thank you, Philly. We love you, Philly. Gritty loves you. I don't know why I was going to call. We can move past that. Moving past that, we're here. Look, the reason that we're bringing them up, specifically in regards to Olympia and Thurston County and what's going on. So, they have been trying to organize for like years now, but they've been particularly coming out of the woodwork in the last few months. And part of their activism is that they really like to vandalize murals. And they're always murals that represent love or diversity or inclusion or, I don't know, Black lives. They showed up in Portland and they vandalized the tribute to George Floyd. They showed up in Seattle and have vandalized a lot. They've done it in Olympia. The most notable destruction is the the Love and Respect Olympia mural. The reason that we're talking about it today is we have some news in regards to that. But first, for those unfamiliar, when they choose to vandalize a mural, they'll always put like fascies and extreme American messaging, just fascist messaging, on a wall, right? And so what they did is they showed up and they completely defaced a mural in downtown Olympia that said "Love and Respect Olympia" with a rainbow. It was nice. It was kind of a staple to our town for a while. For those that don't know the history of it, the reason that that was put up in the first place was because of the massive amount of hate crimes happening at Jake's, the local gay bar. And that mural was supposed to represent diversity and resilience in the face of hate. And so what did they do? Well, once the huge destruction happened, I'll show you the clip here. It was a bad clip. That's pretty disgusting of them to do on something that represents resilience in the face of hate. But of course, they are the hateful people. So what else is new? So that mural was destroyed. And afterwards, right afterwards, local business owners and local Olympians came out into downtown and just came together and fixed the mural in the span of a few hours. They did a damn good job too. It looked very beautiful. It kind of made me cry to be like, hey, they're fixing it, you know, like resilience. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the liberals in Olympia, guess what they did? Guess what they did? I'll give you a hint. They took it down. They took it down. Apparently, it was an agreement with the fucking business owner that only gave them a month extra to still have that up. So, like, can't you understand, Miguel? Seriously, liberals, what the fuck? That is just like selling out immediately, you know? Be like if somebody ran into your car and you're like, you know what? My car doesn't exist anymore. And that's what they did. They just took down the mural. It's in safekeeping. It's gone. It's gone, basically. And now, that's what it is. They have won that little war over the messaging, over do we represent love and diversity or not? It's pretty sad. So, not only have they vandalized a lot of other local artwork, you know, the mural for Trayvon Martin over on 4th Avenue, they've destroyed the black sculptures with the Black Lives Matter banner over on the east side. They've done a lot. But now we have a little more context to who is doing these things. And apparently there is some local appellate court judge who his son, Jacob, is a terrorist. It is a Nazi, really. Just a full Nazi. Like, your son sucks. Sant is how I believe your name is pronounced. Sant. Either way, Jacob, we know who you are. And the thing that concerns us all is the fact that we learned that this specific big destruction of the Love and Respect Olympia mural, it was kind of the pinnacle to the local Patriot Front chapter's recruiting efforts. As a part of that, they actually got permission from and coordinated with Thomas Rousseau, the leader of Patriot Front, to focus on our town and destroy our town. And yeah, that's Olympia. For some reason, we are focused on as the punching bag for Patriot Front. Fuck you, kids. See, the reason that we all hate Patriot Front on the left is not because they're like hard or anything. I mean, you saw that video from Philly. Can we play it again? Always makes you laugh. You gotta love Philly. Gotta love Philly. Look, Philly, you did a good job. But part of that is that we know they can't fight. We know that they're not so organized that they can do that. But they're just a bunch of cowards. That's why they hide their face. That's why they come out with shields wearing the same fucking shit. And when they do late night destructions, they'll sometimes do little videos or shoot photos of themselves doing this to try to like recruit, right? And they're like, oh, we're so cool. We're vandalizing in the dead of night. That's the thing. They do it in the dead of night. They always come out fully blocked up. Well, I'm glad that things are starting to catch up with you. And for those that don't know, we very much encourage people to look up Washington Nazi Watch on Twitter. Wa Nazi Watch. It's amazing because they have done a lot of this work, and now we're starting to see some of these people be exposed for who they are. So, yeah. In regards to the question that somebody asked about Jacob, we're still trying to figure out what his whole deal is. Like, is he still working at the local Costco? Is he not? we shall see. Things have been different as of late. It's a new year. So anyway, yeah. Thank you very much for tuning in, comrades, to that little portion. And fuck Patriot Front. A bunch of kid losers who hide themselves from doing things that aren't even that illegal or that wild, you know what I mean? Like, I've vandalized shit. We're going to make a little side note here. We've seen a lot of conservatives on social media, let's say, talking about Patriot Front, trying to say that they are FBI agents. And this report here says, shut the fuck up. Yeah, that's the thing. You can't just accuse everybody that you don't like of being feds. Sure, there are, like, some federal ploys to try to entrap people, I guess, into getting into white supremacy. That's not one of them. Like, this is not a fed group. They're not paid actors. We all would like to believe that about people we don't like on our side, do we? But when you have the Nazis show up, just know those are Nazis. They're not feds. Pretty obvious. So, just a little side note. Sorry, comrades. Thought I had a little more time. Well, you made it this long, and you didn't turn off the video, so that means something. Thank you for following the news left and staying up to date. If you have any questions or news tips or ideas or anything, if you want to talk, if you need a friend, don't hit me up for that. But, I am on Instagram and Twitter at AllegedlyMiguel. Allegedly. And, I'm working on making some social media for this little project soon. It's still developing. I hope you like the new video. And as always, fuck a fascist, and what's the noise? Fuck the Proud Boys. Alright, thanks for tuning in. The news is leaving. Alright.